we want to welcome all the members here, the members of the committee, which is Mylan Blake, Scott Gilbert, Mike Hughes, Tim Mason, serving with me on this ad hoc committee, and also everybody here that's interested in having their system worked on. Why we're glad to have all the visitors and members. If you recall, the commission voted a while back to earmark $750,000 to help property owners with their failing septic systems. The commission voted last Monday to create this ad hoc committee to review the mayor's septic system cost sharing proposal and to recommend the commission the best way to proceed. The mayor's proposal is in your packet and calls for the residents to fund 30% of the cost. This is a good place to start our discussion. So, what are your thoughts on the 70-30%? And we're going to have to start somewhere, and this is probably where we'll start at is on the cost, and then we'll go from there, and we'll get with the mayor and the questions we got to ask. And go ahead, Malin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With respects to the 70-30 ratio, if you the 750,000 that we've earmarked, if you assume that all that's going to go, I know some of that's currently been tagged for the administration fee, but excuse me, the 750,000 has been earmarked for this initiative. If you take 30% of that 750, that's 219,000. And if we were to go with an 80-20, now I'll step back a little bit. Absolutely believe that there should be some, as they call it, skin in the game. But if you take the 80-20, where 80% is on the county and 20% is on the resident, that's 146,000. So, just my belief is the more that we can, I mean, we got 750,000, and I think an 80-20 is more equitable because you don't take 219,000 out of the economy or take them out of their pocketbooks. Instead, you take 146,000. So, I think that's my position with respects to the ratio. 70-30 takes over 219,000 with the 70-30 and 80-20 is 146,000. Other than that, but again, I agree that there should be some skin in the game. But as much as we can leave in the people's pockets books, I'm for that. That's my position, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Molly. Any more discussion on that, Tim?
The only thing I've had probably from I've had 2 or 3 constituents reach out through email wanting to know how the commission would feel about grandfathered in if they had something done 2 or 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 months ago. And I'd just like to see what the commission as a whole probably would think on that.
Yes, sir, Mayor.
Thank you. You give me a promotion every time you mention my name. I appreciate that. To Commissioner Blake's point, and our office, we don't really have a strong opinion on where that match should be. We looked at the existing state program and tried to mirror that as much as we could. They are at a 60-40 grant right now and have been for quite some time. A couple of unintended consequences, if you will, by changing it to make it more generous, which again, I'm not speaking against an 80-20 or even higher than that, but just to make you aware of some of the things that we took into consideration. The largest is that we are in essence competing with their existing programs, which is state money. They have 2 active watersheds that currently have the 60-40 grant in place. Now, our program is proposed to be countywide. These particular programs, you have to live within the particular watersheds of the creeks that are mentioned, which are Chautauqua Valley and what's the other one? The Conasauga watersheds, okay? by going with a higher match, which we already are, 70-30, is what the proposal is, it would make sense that their programs would suffer when it comes to participation, because who's gonna take a 60-40 match when you can get a 70-30 or an 80-20 even, right? That's not necessarily skin off our backs, but it does affect their ability. If the program is not successful because of that, they could be forced with being penalized in the future when they try to receive state funds for a future program. So that was one of the things we wanted to be a little more generous than the state, but maybe not so much that it hurt them in the future, because this money, when it's gone, it's gone. This is an organization that does this all of the time and hopes to continue to be able to serve the community that way. The only other thing that we considered was trying to get the most bang from our buck, or for our buck, if you will, and the higher the match, or the more generous the match, the fewer people we could potentially serve as a whole. So, again, not to say that we are advocating for or against anything higher than what was proposed, but just a couple of things that we might want to take into consideration. The other comment that was made, we did discuss whether or not we could do this retroactively. According to the federal funding, which is what we're playing with here, the expenses qualify if they're after March of 2020, right? So, in essence, according to the federal rules, yes, those funds could be retroactively paid. However, we decided against making that as a part of our proposal for two reasons. One, the state has never offered that. Two, it becomes sticky, because we're asking folks, once the application window opens, to go through a process and that requires them to be vetted. These individuals wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that before they made their expenses. So I certainly understand why they're asking. It's a great question to ask, but that's really why we haven't included that in the proposal.
Okay, and your proposals, the mayor's proposal was what now?
The proposal that's on the table is a 70-30% match.
70-30.
Yes, sir. 30% being what's brought to the table by the property owner. 70% would then be reimbursed to the property owner from these funds.
Okay. You have something else?
Yeah, I don't want to hurt any other program. That's not the intention. Like I said, I think that 70-30, well, if you go from 70-30 to 80-20, obviously we're talking, I just mentioned the numbers. I think you cast a wider net. I'm not sure how, I don't fully understand how we're hurting their program. I don't want to hurt your program.
Well,
I mean, it's going to be there. It was there before. I don't know what happened. I mean, this is all going to be done, it says in 23, and everything has to be done by 24, obviously. Your program is going to still be in existence when we're done, correct?
These are, yes, I mean, they'll have the opportunity
Right.
to continue to apply for the state funding year after year like they have been.
Right.
But what the state will look at before awarding funding is what was their participation. So if they have an existing program that's 60-40, which they do, and we come along with an 80-20 program, that could affect their participation, because who, if I'm living in the Kasana watershed, why am I going to apply for a 60-40 match when I could apply for an 80-20?
Yeah,
So their participation could suffer from that. Now, obviously, we don't know that, but it's just common sense would assume that would be the case, because we've never done this. They've never done this. If their participation suffered, and with those funds, and there's some $80,000 I think from the state in those two projects that's available, the money's gone. In other words, if it's not spent, then they lose it. So that's one thing to consider in the immediate. The other thing would be is if the participation suffered greatly, then that state would consider that for future funding, should they apply for again. It's not guaranteed funding on their part.
If I can add one thing to clarify there.
Yeah, right. State your name if you don't care, sir.
Matt Heath, Southeast Tennessee RC&D.
Right.
If I may clarify one point there, so our grants are 3-year-long grants, and like Adam had just said, if the funds are not spent within 3 years, that funding availability is gone. But I think that's kind of what you're getting at there, is as far as our ability to spend those funds if we have competing funding that we're working with.
I understand. But even with the 70-30, we're a better deal. I mean, we're talking about an attract, right? I mean, we're gonna play apples to apples. We would do 40, like, I mean, if I take your premise that our quote unquote package is more attractive, it's gonna be more attractive at 70-30 as well, right?
That's correct.
I mean,
So we do have some.
I do not wanna hurt your program or in any way, shape, or form. What I'm after is participation. Let me ask you this: in your expertise or doing this, would you say there's enough volume, enough work out there to cover both programs, so to speak? In other words, there's enough out there for everybody, both this 1 year program and your ongoing program.
Yes, there should be enough need for that. And I do want to clarify, we have some flexibility with the cost share rate that we use on our septic programs. The state caps it at 80%, I believe. We've never done that because it creates a tough scenario for us to get the needed match we need on our grants. So at the end of the 3-year period of these grants, we have to have a certain match amount that the state requires that was in our original proposal. So by putting ourselves at a higher cost share rate, like 80%, it makes it much more difficult to have that final match that we
So
need.
I was chatting with a few people. The average cost of some of these things could be up to $5,000, $7,500 or whatever. And then 30% of that, obviously everybody can do the math. It's just there's going to be those people who need help with what we're trying to accomplish with this program. Perhaps would forego asking or applying for it. That's I was just looking at pure numbers. I didn't know that. I wouldn't say competitive. I don't think we're trying to compete against. Adam, would 75-25 help? If 70-30 is the way we go, I'll respect the will of this commission. I was just looking at how much money we're going to be taking out of household pockets versus we've got 750,000. We actually have 3 million in this bucket. I mean, we still have control on that if we wanted to. That's what I was after. On the other thing, I think that does open up Pandora's box there to a certain degree, but we can chat about that later. But I was just presenting my idea that 80-20 would get more people to participate.
Absolutely, I totally see where you're coming from. Adam had mentioned, like, we're going to continue applying for these grants in the future. So that as the American Rescue Plan funding goes away, we're still going to continue applying for 319
Right.
grants. So,
And
Adam had mentioned we don't want to do anything to set ourselves up to not be as favorable for being awarded these grants in the future. But I understand we're not. Yeah, you're not trying to compete with our grants.
I don't
We
wanna-
all are, trying to get the same thing done, which is
the
putting
other
money
thing
into
is,
the community.
we are, as I understand, as of right now, maybe it'll change. This is a reimbursement scenario, right? So in other
That's right.
words, you have a project and it's $5,000. The homeowner or the person responsible has to put the bill for the 5,000 and then apply to get reimbursement. They're going to get reimbursed 70% of that. So they've got to actually have enough cash or enough cash flow in order to pay for the entire project and then wait for Bradley County to reimburse them. That even makes it even tougher, which I hope we talk about as well, changing it. This will be the only part, I think, of all of our art money that we're doing on reimbursement, right? I think, I'm sorry? It's all been reimbursed. It has, Caring Place didn't. City reimbursement, yeah, because of mortgage. Yeah, so there's some that hasn't been, but again, I'm looking at trying to make it as easy as possible for those to apply and get their septic systems repaired within the time frame. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, sir. Any more questions? Tim?
Not really a question, just a follow-up. I realize too, we've got a lot of, I said my constituents a while ago, but all over the county, we've got folks that are hurting for needing us to get that to them. I'm for everybody in the county to get some relief and help with their, we've heard this on septic tanks for years now. It's time to move.
Cindy?
I understand what you're saying about reimbursement, but if I'm a homeowner and I've had issues with my septic system for years, don't you think if I had $5,000, $7,500, $10,000, I would have already gone and had my septic system repaired? So I'm like you, Mylan. I don't know that reimbursement is the right way to go on this one, because I don't think a lot of people are going to have $5,000 to $10,000 just sitting around waiting to repair their septic system.
I'm in agreement with that. Adam, is you're kind of, I'm gonna tag you. How difficult would it be to change this to when you have a I'm using 5,000 standard. If I'm off, please let me know. We get with whoever is going to do the septic repairs, XYZ company, whoever, and they say it's going to be, they estimate 5,000. Then we basically let the resident know, okay, we're going to pay 70 and you're going to pay 30. How administrative difficult would that be? I mean, I know back office stuff. I'm not trying to make your life more difficult, but Cindy, I think is absolutely right. If I had a septic issue and I could fix it because I had $3,000 or $4,000 in my back pocket, expendable, disposable income, I would do it. And now along comes Bradley County to help out, but yet it's a reimbursement. I mean,
It's a perfectly valid question, and it's one we wrestled with too. I think ultimately we tried to settle. We fell back to what's already in place, which is what
Yeah.
the state does. You know, they're going to cut a check, one check per project, regardless, right? The way it's set up now, the project's done. They're going to send a reimbursement check to the property owner, right? So in this case, if you're talking about letting the property owner off the hook for all but 30%, essentially in my mind, what you'd be looking at is, and it's $6,000 to $8,000 is the average
Is it?
repair
Okay.
cost in Bradley County, is what TDEC has told us. If I'm bringing $2,000 to the table as a property owner, what RC&D would essentially do is cut that one check to the contractor and not to the homeowner. They have been faced with that question before as well, and have kind of gotten into some hot water because not all cases, and I hesitate to paint with a broad brush, but what they've run into is they have paid their part, but then the homeowner doesn't come up with their end of the deal, and then the
and
contractor's
that was
stuck
the
in the
part
middle.
when I was thinking about this is I don't want us to get into the collection
Yeah.
part where we have to, like our friends over at EMS,
Right.
Have to go to collection and say, you
Right.
owe us X amount and stuff like that. But it's
And right now
it's
too,
the balance
yeah.
of how many. And the other thing I was thinking about is once we decide on which way to go, whether it's reimbursement or another way, kind of have to stick with it. You can't
Right.
change horses, build a stream.
Right.
So whatever we come up with, this commission comes up with now, we probably have to stick because it would really look bad to say, oh, we're going to switch back to reimbursement because of all the
Right.
back office issues. So, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So it's an escrow or something like that? Yeah.
Well, that's basically what we want to do. Is the best way to proceed with this, and of course, I guess their share, property owner's share, and what the county pays or what we pay is a big question, and that's probably what we need to come up with first. is what percentage that we're gonna go with. And go from there, and let's just start with that, and then percentage wise, we've got a 20-80, 80-20, then we got a 70-30. So do we have a recommendation as which way we want to go, or do we have that choice? Go ahead,
As
Mr.
far as we're concerned, you have the choice to do whatever you want. It's just a proposal, so you can make any changes or suggest any changes to the commission.
Okay.
I guess the question is the 70-30, will we lose a lot of people at that 10%? Well, obviously our program would be more attractive at 80-20,
Go ahead.
but I don't want to hurt their program.
I know
I
it's
didn't even know anything about that.
70-30, but this is one of the constituents in the fourth district come to the bakery the other day, and he brought me, he just had his field line done last year. And it was just the field line, the total of $9,200. And at that point, he said it would have been a little bit cheaper, except for they couldn't get the cheaper piping to put in. They had to use the upgrade piping. But it was $9,200 to get that done. But I think we need to make it up a little more to 20-80,
Okay.
at least.
Okay, that we
They
got
said got some skin in the game, because you're talking 10 grand. That's $2,000 out of the homeowner's pocket. Some homeowners don't have it right now.
we got a homeowner out here right now. I'm gonna let her speak, and go ahead, state your name and.
Hi, yeah, my name is Kelly Popple. I live in the second district. I've had a failing septic system for going on 8 years. I've had 2 repairs done to that septic system, and it's still failing. There is one final fix that could possibly fix the problem before I actually have to replace the entire system with a different kind of system. I understand where the administrator's coming from. I do wonder, though, if there's a way for you guys to consider whether that homeowner's in one of these other districts that have his programs, and if they are, somehow provide them, make them pay a different rate, or have him help with maybe reimbursing that extra 10 or 20% with the other program. I don't know if that's feasible, but that might be a way to keep your participation up, or, involved in this, but yet still help the homeowners that are not in those 2 districts, which I am not, get the help that they need to be able to fix their systems. So I'm just curious if that might be something you guys might want to consider, if there's some sort of, dual type application that could be filed that would be able to provide the same level of support, meaning 80-20, 90-10, whatever you guys come up with, and still not affect the way his program is running. It's just a suggestion. Also, my current situation, if this doesn't work, the next solution is a brand new system. So I'm also wondering how you guys are planning on helping if a amendment has to be made to the bid after they dig up my system and realize it can't be fixed the way they wanted it to be fixed, and it has to be done a completely different way. Can that bid and application be amended if there's a need to do so? So, because that is very likely to happen in some scenarios. So I want you guys to think about that and figure out how you guys are going to handle that as well, please.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor?
I think one thing to consider or remember is that we're talking about state funds, which is what their existing programs use, and what we're using, which is federal funds. And I think that's a great idea on paper, but the mingling of the two could get a little messy. We for reporting purposes, we need to try to keep this as clean as possible. So I'm not sure how that would work. I would be a little leery, just because you're mingling 2 sets of. If it was all state funding, we may be able to consider that but it's certainly something you can still consider. But I don't know that we'd have a good answer legally for you today on whether that's possible. And you can probably speak to that as well as the other comment that was made.
Sure, happy to elaborate. So unfortunately, our funding is federal in origin. It's administered by the state and subcontracted to the RC&D. So the way our grant works is we cannot match federal with federal. Fortunately, we could not combine the two funding. Now, as far as your other question regarding a repair that's in progress and is needing to have an updated quote due to more work being involved, that's something that with our state grants we've certainly done in the past. It's up to the commission here to decide if they would like to do that. One thing I foresee being a problem is we have that 1-year application period, and the work might not start until month 16 of this project, and then we've got a new quote. We've already got all of our funding allotted for repairs at that point, so that could be messy.
What is the contractor backlog right now that you're experiencing?
It is backlogged. It certainly is. People are months out on repairs at this point, but I think it depends on how much work is involved, materials available, that sort of thing. It's different contractor to contractor as well.
As an average, if you had to estimate, are we 6 months behind, 10 months, 3 months?
3-4 months, if I had to put a number on it, somewhere in that range.
Okay. Determine the split, I guess, probably that's the first thing we want to come up with. And what is the wish of this committee? And also, we need that from the mayor. We need a
I have a follow-up question. If we do change to an 80-20, do you foresee that affecting your internal workload to the point that it would affect the administrative costs we've already discussed?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that shouldn't change
Okay.
anything on the RC&D's end as far as administrative costs.
It would actually be potentially less people overall than 70-30, right?
That's right.
Okay.
I do want to reiterate, if we were to do the 80-20, it affects our ability to use our $80,000 in Clean Water Act funding for septic repairs. I know that we're, looking at a bigger program with the ARP funds, but these funding sources are available in the future, and if we're not able to complete our goals set out in these two grants, it could affect our availability, our capacity to bring funding into the county in the future. So it's something to consider.
okay. Thank you.
It could.
So we're gonna go with the 80-20, is that what we're talking about?
That's my recommendation, but I'll go with the will of the committee and the full commission. I mean,
To
if,
recommend to the
if
commission.
there's more votes for 70-30, I understand. But I would support an 80-20, and I understand what's been said, but like Mr. Gilbert said, I thought $5,000 was a lot. These could be up to 10,000. And 30%, that 10% could keep a lot of people from participating. And that to me is the end, is to get as much participation and clean up as much as Bradley County. Then this commission is going to have to decide how much, if we want to continue with the septic program. We did 750, and for the rest of the bucket, we're going to continue on with that. So, answer your question, Mr. Chairman. I'm for 80-20, but I respect the will of this committee.
Okay.
So, if you need me to put that in the form of a motion, I certainly can.
Yeah, let's do it as a committee. Let's go ahead and put that in form of a
Mr.
motion.
Chairman, I like to change the proposal on the percentage, and where it says Bradley County will reimburse 70, strike that and put 80. And where it says homeowners will be responsible for 30, strike 30 and put 20. I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Have a second? Have a second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Can we touch on one thing here? It's kind of somewhat related, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
On the next page, it says payments for installations beyond the scope of the permit will be the responsibility of the landowner. So let's take some easy numbers, 5,000, but I understand it's probably more. And then it turns out when she started moving dirt, it's 7,000. The $2,000 difference between, what was budgeted or what was originally, scoped out and the actual cost of 7,000. So if I understand that correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, the homeowner would be responsible for that $2,000 difference. Is that correct?
I
Or
think
would that fall under the?
I'll let Matt speak to that because I think that goes back to the question she raises. What if we get in there and realize we quoted you 5,000, but it's going to take 7,000 to fix it? What do you all do in situations like that when they arise?
It says here will be the responsibility of the landowner.
I think that language is addressing, I'll just throw out an example here. Somebody who may be wanting to add a additional bedroom onto their home and figures, while I'm doing this work and this funding's available, I'm going to go ahead and add some additional field lines and maybe upgrade to a larger tank. These funds would not address those additional repairs. So basically what it's saying is that the funding would only address what has been laid out by the permit written by TDEC to get that system back into operation.
It's not like once we got in there, what we originally thought, and then we hit something, and the cost went up. Kind of like almost every single project we do.
I don't think that's
don't
what the
think it's
language was
Okay, I get
addressing.
it. So basically, you're trying to keep people from upgrading or adding on, taking advantage of the situation. Quite frankly, right? I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And however, the commission would like to address the other scenario that you just laid out, where somebody starts work, $5,000, and it turns out it's going to be $7,000 in work.
well, I
However,
mean, even if the project's delayed, like we've seen a couple of projects where we were given a quote, and then it comes in and the piping from the vendor, they marked it up 30% because of supply issues or whatever. That the whole, something like that. It's beyond anybody's control other than the supplier. That's what I was thinking.
Right.
That's what I've seen, or that's one of our schools.
we absolutely see that all the time with state grants. Now, with our grants, we typically will allow that, if there's an updated quote and materials are more expensive or it's more work than the
So-
contractor had originally laid out, we will go with that final quote if the funding is available to do so.
I'm gonna make a safe assumption that with your experience and your expertise and your company, your organization, that you can differentiate between the two, where somebody, it's nobody's fault. It's just project costs a little bit more than what originally, because projects are done by the best guess, versus somebody who's taking advantage of the situation. You guys will make the call on that.
Sure, we do vet the quotes, make sure they're not outlandish or something like that. We also work closely with TDEC on that. If there's something that seems high, we'll put that quote in front of them and get their opinion on it.
So nothing needs to change in that language right there, with the payments for installations beyond the scope of the permit will be responsible for laying. That sounds good. So,
If I
Yeah.
may add,
Go
one
ahead.
thing I think would be good for the commission to consider is potentially a maximum threshold for repairs. I've seen repairs as high as $40,000
Yes.
before.
I agree.
So some of those are just being bid way over cost. I think there's contractors out there who realize that this is a really hard time for landowners to get repairs done. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a backlog right now, so some people are just so eager to get it done that they're willing to pay whatever the cost is.
That's an interesting. Do you also have a requirement for the number of bids? In other words, you don't just have, like, sometimes we'll have a bid and we only have one bid come in, and we have to kind of take that or restart the process. you have like, we have to have at least 2 bids or at least 3 bids come in order for this project to go forward, to get a green light?
We do ask for competing bids.
And
So
if you don't get it,
we typically recommend there's 3 bids that the landowner receives. Now lately, it's been so hard for people to get contractors out to their homes to give these bids because they're so busy. But we do recommend 3
that makes
bids
sense.
for landowners.
Commissioner Gilbert.
Another question. So you're a contractor, right? And you walk up to somebody's house and you bid them a contract. And you do septic tanks and you know what's involved. Why would they even go up? It's not like you're working on a state road and you got to bust rock. You're repairing and replacing septic lines, right?
Mhm.
So pretty much the contract says that I'll do it for $8,000 and you're gonna have to do it for 8,000, right? That generally, that's what I've always done business. Somebody comes in and orders 100 dozen cookies, I order 100 dozen, I order 50 bags of flour to cover them cookies. Their price is not gonna go up because flour went up. Cause I didn't order the stuff to make it with. My uncle was in the fence business. He would come and write a fence job out. You would sign the contract, pay him X amount of dollars down, and he'd go buy your raw material. Come back and put your fence up. Same thing, I don't understand where you're talking about going up on prices.
With all due respect, I don't think that septic repairs are quite that simple. These contractors, they'll begin the work, and as they're excavating, they may find that the tank is cracked, and they'll need to replace the tank.
Okay.
That'll be another $1,500 or so. So there's a lot of unknown things that are below the surface of a septic system that they are not going to figure out until they get down into the system and start pulling things apart.
Another question, you know what it costs to put it in, right?
I am not a contractor, so I have a idea after working on dozens and dozens of these cost shares.
So you know when somebody's gouging somebody too, right?
I do, yeah.
And that's why you're there to advise the homeowner, right?
That's correct.
I think you'll do a fine job.
Mayor.
Thanks, sir.
Matt, a couple of questions. Talk to us about the permit with TDEC. Is that a permit that outlines a dollar amount or strictly the description of the work that needs to be done?
Good question. So the permit written up by TDEC is a description of the work, and they'll take different factors, the number of bedrooms on the house, the soil conditions, all those sorts of things into account as they're writing out that permit.
So in the example that's been asked about, where I have a contractor that's quoted me $5,000, but when he actually gets in and starts to do the work, not because the product maybe went up, but because the scope of the project changed, he says now it's $7,000. That doesn't affect the permit, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
What do you all do in that case when it comes to the agreement that you have for the funding in the grant? You've got paperwork drawn up that says we're doing this for $5,000. Now it's turned into $7,000. Logistically, what does that look like on your end, and how do you all manage that?
We would send an updated application and agreement form for the landowner to sign, outlining that the new quote was $7,000, let's say, and that we'll be doing the 60/40, or in this case 80-20% cost share on that number. So we would need that updated quote from the landowner and then the application and agreement form.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Adam, and they was talking about the homeowner having to come up with all the money at one time theirself and then get reimbursed. Is there any way that they don't have to come up with that money?
Well, I think there's precedent, like Lori mentioned, with how we handle the water fund. The proposal was just based on what the state does currently. That is a lot of money to come up with, even if it's just a few $1,000s. So I think if we were going to consider something like that, I think in order to satisfy the concern of the homeowner not paying after the fact, do what we do with the water, which is ask them to put their 30% down with the contractor. And I think it's important, too, to try to be as clean as possible. Right now, the way the proposal's set up, the relationship is between the contractor and the homeowner, right? Not between RC&D and the contractor and the homeowner. And I think that's going to be important to keep because,
They're
there's a
just
little-
there to keep the homeowners from
correct, they're
getting
managing
beat
the
out
process,
and the
correct, and managing
county
our
and the
money.
state, federal.
Right.
Good.
So I think if the concern is, how do I come up with all of that, I think that might be a great suggestion. Does that change anything for you? You're still cutting one check at the end of the project, except now you are cutting the check to the contractor and not the homeowner in this scenario. Am I right?
In that scenario, that sounds like how we would go about it.
Okay.
Correct.
There,
Again, we haven't done that on our grants, so it would be something new for us, but we could certainly go about it that way.
there are also, Matt mentioned this to me this morning. You have a project that you're working on right now, and the woman secured a USDA loan for the full amount of the project that I'm assuming once she's reimbursed, will just go and pay back, correct?
That's right.
But that, so there are ways to come up with the funding if you don't have it. But certainly I think what we just talked about might be simpler. They would also, that option would still be on the table too for individuals, I guess.
That would be great.
Any more questions on that? I'd just like to say that, of course, we're involved in, Scott and I are involved in areas, and Tim too, where there's a lot of septic tank problems. And, like I said, the people out there don't have, a lot of times don't have the financing, or they'd already had it fixed anyway. And, so I guess, to proceed with the contract with the homeowner, our C&D would take care of that, right? Take care of the contractor.
I'm sorry, so you're asking?
Okay, the homeowner, in other words, the homeowner filled out an application to get this done. They would bring, and you approved that. We approved it, or you approved it, and that was. Then you would go to the contractor and get the contractor to give you a bid on it. Is that true?
Typically, the landowners are the ones coordinating with the contractors. We don't like to be involved in that side of the repairs. So we would ask the landowner to get the quotes from 3 contractors of their choice, and then whatever quote they decide to go with, we'll have them send that over to us, and we go from there.
So would you send them a contractor to see?
I'm sorry?
Would you send them a contractor, or would you have a list of contractors they could see?
We could provide a list of certified contractors for them. Yes, sir.
Okay, but could they get their own?
As long as it's on that list of certified contractors.
Has to be
Okay,
on
that's
that
be on that list, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and who'll furnish that list?
That's available through TDEC, but we're happy to coordinate that with the landowners.
With T-Deck, okay, make sure that they're licensed and whatever to do it. Okay.
One other question, does that kind of hold up your local people that's not on TDEC's paperwork or on their
If
list of people?
It's
Because we got some good local people that does septic
then they need
tanks
to be
too.
on TDEC's list, because
Is there information on how to get on that?
they would, if they want to be in the business of repairing septic tanks, I would imagine they would have the fortitude to do that. What you don't want is, kind of what we've seen with another project, is I have a friend, he's a buddy, he's a pal, he's a cousin of, who kind of thing, and that gets really crazy. We saw that happen. Well, so they need to be approved, licensed,
And then they'll have to be
contractors.
registered with TDEC. If
So
they're
in other
approved,
wo-
licensed, insured.
Yeah, they're bonded and all the kind of stuff to keep everything nice and neat, instead of saying, my cousin over here, he knows how to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And he can do that for us and get paid. No, that we would definitely want to avoid.
Okay, how about a licensed plumber? He's licensed to do that, right? If he's licensed a plumber, if you got a contractor, any contractor, plumbing contractor out there is licensed, does that come under TDEC?
I can't say, to be case by case, but I would assume that it would be in their benefit to go ahead and get that certification through TDEC if they were going to be doing septic work. So I would assume that most of them, worth their snuff, have that certification.
Okay. Anything else?
That would be ideal. That'd be next Monday night.
Yeah.
Well, if yes, that's right. We just want to have everything in place. I have too. I didn't hand it out because I didn't know if there'd be some changes, but we do have. If you'd like to see it afterwards or now, the tentative application and agreement, what it would look like. This is what the homeowner or the property owner, I should say, would fill
Yeah.
out and would be the agreement
Yeah,
between
ask about-
themselves and
We got,
RC&D.
ain't got down to them
Um,
yet.
So yeah, the sooner the better. Monday would be great because
Okay.
that would give us time to get ready before the first of the year. They have a form already in place, so we just tweaked it for Bradley County.
Okay, the question is this program for property owners or tenants or both?
Property owner is the term we use. I think as I've thought about it, if I am renting and I have a failing septic system and my landlord wants to take advantage of this, then that's a win-win for both of us. But I think one of the concerns that I heard or that was asked to me was what is to keep a developer from coming in and fixing a whole bunch of properties. And I guess the answer to that is nothing. It's important to point out this is not for new construction or new development, so you can take that off the table. But that would be something to consider. I guess at the end of the day, if we're trying to help anyone with a septic system that's failing or needs repair, I guess my question back would be, does that really matter whether we're talking about a tenant versus the landlord? And that's how I interpreted that question.
If
I'm
you
wrong,
got if you've got a tenant there that got a lease signed, then he would surely go back to the
Right.
property owner.
and I think in that particular case, they would work with the landlord as the property owner
Mhm.
versus me as the tenant, right? I'm renting, so if my dishwasher goes out, I'm not the one paying for the dishwasher, it's my landlord. So, they would kick it to the property owner at that point.
Okay. Okay, that's all for right now. We'll might holler at you again here in a minute.
So
Uh,
it's definitely, Adam, not for new construction. I mean, the house,
Correct.
I would say, I'm thinking at the top of my head, which I never should do, but the home should be at least a couple of years old. Keep that from happening. Because if you got a house that's 24 months, they should still kind of be under warranty to a certain degree with the developer, probably even more in 36 months. But you got obviously some landlords that own like 15 homes. This has got the per lot, right? I mean, in other words, you're not going to get a volume deal with if you own 15 homes on one street kind of thing.
Right. And I think, I'm not a developer, but I can't imagine we have a lot of apartment complexes in rural parts of the county that are really struggling with this issue. So
Yeah.
my common sense would tell me that we are talking about individual lots or homes that are already in existence. But that is,
But-
if there's a specific concern, now would be the time, I think, address that.
Yeah.
Do you guys look at the age of the house? I mean, how old it is? In other words, a home that's just been built and just got their occupancy certification and all that shouldn't be a part of this. For those homes that are older, probably I'm thinking even 5 years older, and the only reason they haven't fixed is the monetary issue. Nobody wants septic issues.
Sure. Yeah, our grants are typically directed toward aging septic systems. I don't think I've ever come across one that's a year old that has a failed system.
So, Adam, you don't think we need to put an age requirement in there? The home has to be at least 60 months old or something?
I mean, there isn't one now. I would hope that that's a pretty minimum. I can imagine. From the complaints that we get in our office, we're not talking about new homes. These
Right.
are
So we don't
older
need to put
homes.
something in there.
So, I mean, if you're aware of a specific situation, it might be worth putting some language in there, but I don't know how big of a problem it really is.
I don't want
to be
to. I don't
addressed.
want to chase a problem, but
Yeah.
I also don't want a 36-month home
Right. And I think their expertise will really come into play because if someone does come to them new, they're able to say, you know, they're able to coach them in the right direction if something's under warranty or.
Okay, another question that was brought up.
One
was-
word on that,
Oh, okay.
Howard.
Yeah.
If it's a landlord, he's collecting rent. If he's collecting rent, why shouldn't he pay his own septic, get his own septic bill fixed? I think it ought to be just the homeowner. If you've owned your home, you've lived there over, if it's not even a new home, if it's an old home and you've just bought it and you've lived there over a year, or don't even put a time on it, but it actually be homeowners, not for renters. He can, if all the homeowners get theirs done, then you got money left, fix the renters. But let's take care of the homeowners first. That's what this is for, right? I mean, I know it's for septic systems, but if I'm collecting rent, I pay rent, and there's a part of that rent that goes to keep up the building of it where I'm at.
Yes, Mayor.
Matt, how many projects have you worked with the landlord on versus just the homeowner?
A handful. I've never seen a case where there's a landowner who's decided to repair all 10 of his properties or anything like that. So that sounds like an extreme case. But I've worked on repairs where you have a landlord who owns a property. He wants that one repaired, and then he's gonna repair the system at his primary residence as well. I have seen that before.
Should we not deal directly with the landlord and leave the tenant out of it?
I don't foresee a situation where the tenant would be involved personally. If I was a tenant, I would come to my landlord and say, "Hey, our septic system's failing. You need to replace this."
So if you're a landlord now, you can have your septic system fixed by the county. That'd be part of that.
But that's the way the current proposal is, and I believe what he's saying is that is the way their state program works now too.
And the whole idea of that is getting all septic tanks fixed.
If the goal is to fix, repair these septic systems, then yes.
Again, the grants that we have worked on in the past are to address water quality issues. So our bigger goal is to keep bacteria out of watersheds. Now with this one, it's a bit different. Our goal is just to help out families by repairing systems. But it's however the commission would like to go about it.
Okay, question I have is on petitions that you're going to put out. Is that, I guess, do those petitions, where do they go to once they're filled out? Go back into the county?
The
ours.
applications, those
So-
would be handled between our C&D and the property owner.
Okay.
So the way the program would work, I would reach out to our C&D. They're managing the entire process for Bradley County, and I would fill out the application and work with them through the project completion.
So the homeowner has to actually reach out to RC&D, right?
Correct. And that will be advertised both on our end as well as by our C&D.
Okay.
And I'm sure the banner will help us with that too.
Okay, it's another question asked, sliding scale based on income. Is that
I don't see me supporting that at all.
don't need to bring that at all,
Yeah,
okay?
and I'll give you my
That was a
reasons.
question that was brought up, so that's
When
something
you
that
start doing income verification, you get
Yeah.
into muddy water.
get into a lot of problems, yeah.
Because who you gonna
Yeah.
use, the landlords or the tenants? Gonna do
Yeah.
that?
Then can this be retroactive? That was one of the last questions was asked there. So,
That was kind of what Commissioner Mason, I think, was alluding to, grandfather clause in. And always the question on that is how far back do you go? And you're gonna draw that line. And as we found out with premium pay, as soon as you draw that line, you're gonna have some people who were 4 days before that line. I don't know, but you guys don't grandfather clause in on that, right? I mean,
In other words, they gotta get the work done by you before it's approved.
and
That's
then
what-
who they
that's
had
true, yeah.
do their repair, was it someone that would be off of the T-Deck list?
Yeah.
As which, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'll take on those bids, what if contractor A, contractor B actually charges for them to come out and do a bid? Like, in other words, for me to come out and give you a bid, it's gonna be $200. I'm just coming up with a number, but do you see that?
We don't see that.
Okay.
Very often, I mean, there could be contractors who do it that way. I'll let Adam speak to
Adam.
how he would like to go about that.
If
Ask,
you're
ask
gonna
that
require,
again.
if you're gonna require 3 bids and they charge $200 to give you a bid, it would, obviously one's gonna win the bid and two are gonna get paid just for bidding, I guess. I mean,
Yeah,
I was
we could.
asked that question, so I'm
Yeah.
just reiterating the question.
How often
It's
does that happen?
company there.
If it's not a concern, I get
We
it.
don't see that, and I'm
Okay.
not sure if it's
So we
because
just-
some contractors will pad that into their final quote.
Cost of doing business.
But,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
it's not something that we see from the landowner or
If you-
from the contractor.
Very good. I was just asked that. I was just reiterating the question.
Mhm.
I would
We-
hope
we
that's
haven't
not the
signed
case.
a
We're about
contract
to
for that.
really keep our septic contractors in business for the next 18 months, so they'll be all right
Well, I mean,
without
we
that
could-
$50.
The other thing I was
Service
saying
fee, I
about is a
think.
volume deal. If you'll do 5 of them, will you give us a discount? I mean,
Okay, there's another question, number B on there. That need to be brought up,
the
Yeah.
contract with,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
That's part of your proposal, is to enter into a contract, the mayor sign a contract, well, the terms that were outlined, that I think the pricing was 75,000. Yeah, 75,000 for the first year, which would be year 23, right? And then a maximum of 115 for a full 2 years, which I anticipate doing. So 115 is the bid max. The
750,000.
question I have is it a part of the 750? I think it is. We earmarked 750,000 to go towards repairing septic tanks. So we're actually 750 times minus 115 is what's actually gonna go out there. What would be the detriment of changing where the 750 is what they have to grant out, and the 115 is,
No, there's nothing other
is-
than
is-
the commission's
we got
approval at that point. I don't remember how much is left in the first bucket where we earmarked a bunch of
this is coming out of the sewer
administrative.
bucket.
Right, currently, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't remember, I think it was after the premium pay, didn't we leave whatever was left and allocate that towards administrative costs for some of these? So I
Right,
think,
but we had to take some out of there because affordable housing went over.
yeah, so
affordable-
there's nothing left.
Yeah, there's nothing
Okay.
in premium pay because affordable housing,
Yeah.
we went just a tad over, and we pulled
Yeah.
out of there.
It
but-
could easily be taken from anywhere else.
I
It would
mean,
just
what's
be
the-
commission's approval.
Does it add any bureaucracy to you?
It gives
This
us
way,
the chance to do
the
more.
A little history. The original motion I was thinking was 300,000. Commissioner Hughes said that's not going to get much done. We went up to 750. I would like to see all 750 go towards what we're hoping to accomplish. I have no problem paying the administrative fee. I think it's reasonable, but I'd like to see the 750 be used for septic, and the 115 over 2 years, which would put us at what, Story? 750 plus 115. Okay.
And to give some perspective, if you were talking about the full
865.
750,
So 865 out of 3 million, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
if we're talking about granting out the full 750, which I think would be great, and you use that number, even the high number of $8,000, we're talking anywhere from 80 to 100 potential projects with that kind of money.
that's a good.
And we've already been told by TDEC that 80 is sort of that magic number of what they expect we could do easily in a year. So there was some concern initially, is this too much money? But I think it's a sweet spot, and we may find that we want to come back and amend and add more to it. That's certainly an option later. I think it just depends on how high the participation
But
rate is.
it doesn't mess up anything that you guys are proposing to go with 750, and then they're paid out of.
There's 3 million in the sewer bucket,
Yeah.
of which the 750 came from. So as long as we don't have any plans currently for the remaining funds in that bucket. So
Right, yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, I propose that 750 is earmarked for the septic repair, and their administrative fee is in addition to that 750. So that the 750 goes towards septics like
For
we,
septic tank,
yeah.
septic repairs.
So that would make the total that we probably need to earmark, or what will be taken out of the bucket, potential of 865. 750 for repairs, and the rest of it for administrative.
That's great.
Are you talking about putting the 75,000 and or the 115 into that set?
What I'm talking about is, right now, I believe the way the proposal's coming to us is you have 750,000. And there's gonna be about 115,000 over 2 years in administrative fees that are gonna come down. So basically 750 minus 115,000 is what you're really gonna have out there for your 70-30 ratio. I'm
Can
sorry.
I ask you another question, young man? So if everybody gets, you're talking 2023, if we do 1 year, right?
That's right.
If everybody gets all their applications put in, all their applications turned in to you, and it oversees the 2023 year into 2024, will you stay with that contract?
Yeah, the contract says it.
So if it goes over that year, you have to stay with them. But do you foresee it going, more people coming in the next year?
The way
In
that
24 months instead of 12?
the way the proposal has been laid out, so the application period would be that first year, and then that last year from 2023 to 2024, that would be to complete the repairs. Now that was just what the proposal laid out. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Adam.
Are you understanding what I'm saying?
yes. So one, we wanted to try to get an idea. We didn't want an open-ended
Right.
agreement with them because we were trying to get an idea of what the administrative cost would be. So we felt like 1 year. Also, keeping in mind that we've got to have these funds spent by a certain, they have to be committed and
Right.
spent by a certain amount of time, by a deadline. So, as he mentioned, that 2023, we would be open for applications. Now, we may find that we take every application and spend every dime in 3 months. We just don't know. No one can really tell. Nobody's ever done this. We may go the full year and have money left over, but the whole of 2024 would be for them to wrap up any projects. So we know, as you mentioned earlier, 3 to 4 months is a backlog. This may even create more of a backlog. We don't know. But if I come in on December 31st of 2024 and I fill out and complete my application, I've got the full next year with the backlog from contractors to get the work done and the reimbursement cut at that point.
So if they get your contract signed, let's say we put this into action, and next month you get a contract, right? And that person gets a contract, and the contractor takes 6 months for he can get to him, right? And then there's more and more people, and then it takes that contractor a year and a half to get with people. The ones that's done on the contract and the money that we done paid you, the 75,000, that carries into that 2024, right?
So you're saying
Once a
the money
contract's,
for the
once a contract's in for 2023, it's in. And you're gonna be overseeing it, even if it goes into 2024.
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's
yeah, the project management would be for the 2 years that are outlined there. Any funding that has been set aside for a landowner's repair would be available up to
Okay,
that
I've
24
read that.
month of the
Read it.
program. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It does.
We feel pretty confident that there's at least a good solid first year
years.
work for them. So that's why you see the 75,000. To be honest, on the back end, everything after that for that next year is really month to month. it's around $3,300 a month. So we may find that we wrap everything up in 18 months. Well, we don't want to be on the hook for the full second year, so we would only pay, 3,300 times 6 months. If that
Getting the
makes sense.
contractor's gonna be the big thing, right?
That's right. I think so.
Any more questions, Tim?
Now, Lori, did we, get a motion and a second on the 750? So let me, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'll make a motion that the 750 is earmarked for septic repairs, and the 115, potential 115 is an addition to that. It's not to come out of the 750. Put that in the form of a motion. Thank you.
Got a second by Scott. All in favor? Say aye.
All right.
Yeah.
You said that your estimate is about 80 projects on that?
If you use
And if we
the
do
numbers
80
that,
projects, we're
yeah,
doing really
80,
good.
80 to
Yeah.
100.
Okay. Yes, Laura.
Go ahead and get a motion to approve an agreement with RDNC to
Okay.
oversee this, because the resolution that comes to this body will be a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with them, including the parameters that you have set today. So-
Including what finances we approved today. Okay. Do I have a motion to do that? It's considered
Mr. Chairman,
permanent.
I make a motion that we accept the proposal of the enter into a contract with, I forgot your name already.
Southeast Tennessee
Southeast
Research.
Tennessee Research Conservation and Development Council. Say that 4 times real quick.
Okay.
What's that?
RC&D.
RC&D.
Sometimes initials are good. I make that in form of a motion.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Got a second by Tim. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. We got some communication from the audience here. Let's get that on the agenda now.
Sorry, again.
Okay.
Couple more questions. The fix that's currently proposed by TDEC for my septic system is a very large interceptor to take the watershed off of my line. Is that sort of fix a part of your normal program, and would it, under your normal program, be approved as long as TDEC had approved it? So that even if I'm not replacing any lines or anything, I'm just getting the water off of those lines, that would be approved? Okay, so that's a yes, that's a good thing. Secondly, the question about contractors charging to bid, even though you might not have seen it a lot, all 3 of the contractors that I've been working with have now asked for a charge to be applied as a bid. I don't know if that's a new thing that's starting because people are getting multiple bids and it's costing them money to come out and do the analysis and write up the bid. But if that is the case, I'd love to see you guys at least allow one of those bids to be a part of the proposal so that that can be reimbursed at least at 80%, so that the homeowner's not having to pay for, all of these bids if that's a requirement to do so. The most expensive one was $200.
Did they say they would add that back to your,
They could put it on the bid, yes.
they could put it back to the cost of what you're,
Correct,
if you use them?
correct. But
But
it
you
would
get
be on,
3
it would be an
contractors, you're
additional
out
charge on the bid.
$400 if they charge you. A lot of them's charging to come out because of gas prices and
Correct.
different things like that now.
But if you get 3 bids and they all 3 charge you a fee, you're going to pay the other 2.
You're gonna have
Correct.
to, yeah.
Yeah.
I just think having at least one of them on the proposal would be helpful for the customer, for the
Hey, young man,
homeowner.
does TDEC make them? Does the contractors they got with them, do they allow them to do that? Yes.
Yeah.
It's not something that I'm aware of as a requirement. You're saying, do they require?
No, does TDEC, excuse me, does TDEC allow contractors to charge X amount of dollars to come out and look, to give you a quote?
I haven't heard one way or the other. I wish that Mark Dillard from TDEC was here. He's the one that permits and inspects repairs in Bradley. I haven't heard one way or the other, and frankly, I haven't seen this this charge. Maybe it's just in the quote and it's not itemized. But I don't know if it's a
It's
contractor by contractor.
It's
sort of
they're
thing.
actually charging you that when you come out. It costs you that too. Because if you don't use them, then they're saying they're lost out.
Sure.
Most businesses, if they're competing businesses, they don't have to do that.
Ironically, I just got a text from Mr. Dillard, and he said that the contractor that I'm referring to is on their approved list. So
It-
this
paid under
practice,
the employee.
apparently, if it's not known,
Yeah.
it's definitely something that is happening, and TDEC is okay with it.
Through TDEC.
So,
There's got to be a permit pulled on it through TDEC to begin with, right?
That's correct. Any repair that would be covered by this program needs to go through the permitting inspecting process used by TDEC.
Which is the young man you're referring to, right?
That's right, Mr. Dillard.
Cool.
Okay, thank you.
But the problem I see with that, I mean, I don't want to chase a rabbit hole, but if you have contractor A, contractor B, contractor C, and they all are going to charge $250 or whatever, obviously one's going to win. The other two are going to be paid just because they came out and gave a bid. I'm just not for that, because that's just the cost of doing business. They make their, so in other words, I can go out there and I'm going to be 10% over what I think the others are going to be over, and I'm going to get paid $250. I mean, you look at, sometimes you got to follow the money and follow the incentive. And we're going to have 80 of these, if not more. So if I'm company B, I'm not using any names, I'm going to go make a bid on every one of these projects. And we're requiring multiple bids. I'm going to get paid $250 for every bid I make.
I'm just gonna go bid them.
I'm in the bidding business. So paying someone to bid, they're just gonna have to know that they're entering into a quasi quote unquote government program, and your bid better be so attractive and so good that it wins, so that you get the business.
On all of them.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I see a rabbit hole or somebody who doesn't have the best intentions taking advantage of bidding.
I totally agree, Mylan. What I guess I would hope is that the one that wins, if they put that on their bid as a line item, that it can be a part of the proposal and be reimbursed
I have
at
no
80%.
problem with that. I mean,
That's what I'm looking for,
but
just
I don't
because,
want bidding just for the sake of bidding.
Correct.
So I get a check for $250 because I'll bid 5 times tomorrow.
agreed.
And one more question. Do they have to have 3 bids? Or if they turn you in a good bid and you're pleased with it, you say,
Can I have more than one?
I would say it's however the commission wants to go about it. It's what our Clean Water Act grants typically advise landowners on. You know, no one wants to be taken for a ride, so that
Right.
provides a little additional security measure that you're getting a fair bid. But it's however the commission would like
And
to go about it.
you say that it's hard right now for contractors to come out. So let's at least cut it down to 2 bids.
At least 2 bids, yeah.
Mayor, do you have something?
No, I think as long as we're going to include, I would agree that whatever that winning bid includes, that's what will be reimbursed.
Sure.
So I think the onus is on the homeowner, because again, they're the ones calling and getting the bids. And listen, I'm a capitalist.
Yeah.
If I'm a homeowner and I call you to come out and get a bid and you tell me it's going to be $100, I'm going to tell you, sorry, I'm going to the next guy. You know, I also don't blame the contractors, because it is their time, gas, and staffing, and chances are they're going to get a big pop of potential business off this. So, you know, I would say let the market work itself out and see who really charges those and who doesn't. But I think as long as we're able to reimburse what's on the bid, and if that's their $200 estimate fee or whatever we want to call it, then I think that's appropriate. We can certainly go with that. Right.
We have to make the 2 bids.
We got a motion on the floor, maximum of 2 bids, minimum 2 bids. If they're gonna charge for every one of them, you need to put a maximum on them too.
So do I need
Uh,
to make a motion?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion to have a minimum of 2 bids.
Got a first and second. All in favor?
Ah,
No opposed. Any more questions from the committee? Any communication from the audience? Are you done? Okay.
one more thing, Tom.
Yes, sir. We've got one more thing.
Is there anything that you'd like to add, sir? Is there anything that you need to add that will help us and protect us and?
I did mention this earlier. I don't know if there needs to be a vote on it or anything, but I think it may be worth considering what the maximum amount that this program should cover should be.
That's a good point. Do you have a
I brought up
recommendation on
earlier,
that?
I've seen repairs as high as $40,000.
Do you have a recommendation on that? I mean,
I think,
All
so
of
I
it-
had spoken with one of the grant administrators at TDA about this when I saw that very high quote. And she had told me the highest she's seen in her career working on these grants that TDA provides, the Clean Water Act grants, was somewhere around $20,000. So that $40,000 one.
That's a max.
That was the highest that she's seen. Now we're in strange times. There's a shortage of contractors available. Prices have gone up across the board, but that was the highest she's seen up to this point.
20,000.
Okay.
How much you think, sir? 10,000?
Since how I've never repaired a septic tank.
Well, this is lines right here. This
don't
is I've got an actual
I
quote.
do agree
from
with
the
that
guy.
there's a maximum, because, I mean, but they're gonna outbid themselves. I mean, that's the bidding process should weed out the people, unless they in collusion together.
One
Okay.
concern I would have is contractor availability again. So if there's somebody who says that, yeah, I guarantee you I can get this work done within the 2-year period of this program, they may end up going with them and paying that higher price. Now, if there's a cap, all those contractors are going to need to be below that. So
And I apologize. You said 20,000 is a good cap?
that was what I've heard is like, that kind of on the highest end of repairs
Right.
in Bradley.
But the bidding process should give you the best bang for your buck, right? I mean, they don't know, the bidders don't know what each other's bidding, right? I mean,
Sure.
right, I
sure.
mean, that's the whole
Mhm.
concept, right?
Mhm.
Hey,
So a
Mama,
maximum of 20,000?
Oh.
The gentleman that brought me this right here, he told me his first bid was 20,000.
So 20,000.
And then this bid right here is 9,500. This is what he actually
So-
paid.
So if you had one person who
One
bid
person bid
9,500,
it for
another person
20,000,
bid
the other
20,000, then
done
95
it
is
for
gonna win.
9,200.
That's
That's the purpose, getting 2 bids, really.
Yeah.
exactly, and that's why I think it'd be advisable to put a cap on it. That way the prices don't just keep going up and up as contractors see these funds available.
Yeah, and they
Keep
come in
people
and
honest.
just gouge
Uh,
you.
this,
12.5.
do you want to put a cap on it? Does this committee want to put a cap on it?
What do you think, Tim? What do you think, 12.5? $20? It's 20. I second.
Got a motion for that, 20,000? You second?
Yeah,
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna oppose that. Okay. Anything else?
Just last thing, I don't know, how will you go about, Adam alluded to, how will you advertise this so that many people know about this program as possible? I mean, I have all the respect in the world for the banner and what they do for our community, but perhaps a little bit more. How would you go about doing it? I mean, word of mouth, or just what are your thoughts on letting people know that this program exists starting in 2023?
Sure. So our typical media sources, we use the banner. We use Facebook pages, even things as simple as like community centers, we'll put up flyers, that sort of thing. We've done targeted mailouts in the past in areas that are especially prone to septic issues, so that may be a good avenue for advertising. But we
And-
also want to be able to really partner with the outreach with you guys, since you all know what works best in your county. So any sort of recommendations, we will go that route as well.
So I'm assuming that there's going to be a certain number of contractors. I mean, right, you kind of have your top 10, your top 15, top whatever, and they're going to know about this. So XYZ septic repair guy,
That's right.
and I mean, you'll let them know. And
Sure. What
and
we
the-
do in our grants also is we'll host a like an informative session for the contractors to let them know.
they're probably
all
the
the
best
ins and
ones
outs of the
because they
program.
get a call from resident A. They know about the program. The resident doesn't, and they say, "Hey, resident A, by the way, the county has a program that you may be interested in," and that kind of thing, right?
Mhm. That's right.
Okay, what was it, 120? There's people that sometimes request a repair. In other words, they can go to TDEC or they can go to over here and they get a repair permit. So if a contractor runs into a septic that can be repaired instead of replaced, and which a lot of times is a lot cheaper, and will that play into this in any way?
So with our grants in the past, we will, replace whatever needs to be replaced to get that system functioning again. Adam, do you have any preferences there or thoughts on that?
Ask the question again. I'm sorry. I was looking for the map.
Um,
I mean, I think we have to rely on the bids and what the contractor says at that
Contract.
point and their expertise.
There's a lot of that happens, repairs. So that's, yeah. Right.
Is that correct?
Okay. So it'd be for a full septic tank in there, a full septic
For
tank
repair.
repair. Yeah. Well,
So you
what
do
is-
have to have a permit to repair your septic tank?
That's right. It
Yeah.
has to go through the TDEC
Yeah.
permitting process.
Okay.
Mhm. So
One
it
more
is-
question for you.
Mhm.
And he's Howard's mine too, and all of us up here. So when they get their contract from their contractor that says it's X amount, $15,000, and you look at that and you say, this is way too much, you're gonna tell that homeowner that, right?
Hopefully with that homeowner has a second bid in hand.
Yes.
And we can look at both. And You
And
know,
what if both
if
of us
one's
do that?
substantially more than the other, I would assume that landowner is going with the cheaper quote, but we will advise landowners on what we think is fair pricing.
Okay.
Any more questions? Anything else from the audience? We're adjourned. I don't know, they so much. There's so much. Uh, do,
Think we did good? I mean, I said 20,000, but surely. to my
well,
soul,
I,
they won't be- If you said 9,500 on just, dang lines.
it usually runs from 9 to 12,000, somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
well, we could've capped
Unless
it.
you run into rock. Run into-
Yeah.
Just for a line.
That's what I thought you said, just the line was 9,500.
Yeah.
All this septic tank where it went, the line he put was 100. And it was originally supposed to be 70.
77,000. I mean, 7,000.
Originally supposed to be 7. Right there.
They make all.
Going to get medium grade septic tank.